bring me up to speed. What in the hell is going on in California that could have it sounds like to me it could have a ripple effect everywhere.
Oh, it's not a can, it's a will. It will have a ripple effect everywhere, and to every person who goes out to buy an RV, whether it's new or used. What is occurring right now, and it's not a matter of it's occurring so much as the rules already been put in place. This is coming, but over the course of the next year or two, it will really begin to impact everybody.
So we are just before Thanksgiving, 2024. And like you said, this is going to happen. It's not like, well, they're talking about it happening. This is imminent. And so in just a few weeks, what is going to happen without, I don't know. I got lost kind of in the weeds with all this stuff, but generally speaking, from a high level, let's start there. What is California doing, and how is that affecting RV owners, especially motorhome owners, buyers?
Well, when you think about it, let me hit the high point. And you're right. Let's start there. Basically, California for decades has been a leader in fighting pollution. And that usually means the auto emissions, what some people call the tailpipe law, so to speak. That's where they measure the dirty emissions that came out of motor vehicles. And that's still the way they measure them. Well, there's a national standard set by the EPA and whatever, okay? But California, all states are allowed to exempt themselves from that as long as they can get tighter, but they can't get looser than the federal standard. Well, decades ago, California decided they like their sunshine, they like their beaches, they like their clean air, so they started passing tougher laws for emissions of motor vehicles. And that pretty much was always a higher standard than the federal level. Period. Well, now what they've done is over the past decade, basically, they have been trying to ramp up higher and higher levels of no pollution. The target was over a period of about a decade, they were aiming toward getting near zero pollution. And so what they've done just recently is they revised their pollution rule to go after what's a zero, but it affects mostly diesel and gasoline big rigs. Now, when you go down the highway and you see these semi trucks and whatever, those are almost always diesels. And the reason is because, of course, not only is it fuel efficient, but that diesel engine can create more pulling power than a gasoline engine. Right. So, and the result is the RV companies, they pretty quickly realized, hey, we put some of those chassis from the semi trucks, we can build RVs on those and make bigger and better RVs loaded up with more stuff. That's how we got to the big Class A's that we have had.
So that's primarily Freightliner is a huge maker of chassis for these Class A's, and I think Spartan is also. And so these manufacturers of frames. Let me back up a little bit more. The acronym that you sent me the articles on is CARB, C-A-R-B, and it's California, what is it? Air Resources Board, California Air Resources Board. So this unelected, I have to say, a group of bureaucrats is lumped RVs, Class A's, and these larger diesel-powered motorhomes into this category with 18-wheelers, requiring the manufacturer to have a percentage of their fleet that it goes underneath the emissions minimums. I don't know if this help me out.
That's sort of it. But the board you're talking about is government appointed people who are in the industry or related to the industry in terms of air pollution. Okay, so they're not strangers anyway to what they're doing.
Hang on. But they're not the RV industry, because they wouldn't have done something like this. They're in the industry of breathing air and making up rules. I mean, that's true. My opinion. So, but
they didn't go after the RV industry. That's the way they got the RV industry.
Exactly.
Instead, they went after the big rig idea. Okay, and because the big rigs, the chassis that fuel and power semi trucks are also the same chassis that power some of the C's and the A's out there that have RVs built on them. The RVs got dragged into that level of pollution emission that they're trying to cut back on. And what they've done is they've basically set a rule that says that according to how big your pollution factor is, so to speak, with the size of the engine and such, then you have to have a certain percentage of all of those that you make that are a zero level of emissions. They're not saying you can't make them at all. They're only saying that you got to have a certain percentage that you make that are zero. Well, the only way to get to zero nowadays is go electric. And there aren't that many electric semis out there, but there are some. And there are virtually no electric RVs that are out there that are mass produced whatsoever. So the result of it is the RVs got dragged into that purely because they use the same chassis.
And so new RVs starting almost right away, 2025s, motorhomes that have got a diesel engine, the larger ones, the Class A's, the Super C's, will not be able to be sold in California. That's kind of the short story. There may be an exception here and there, but you're not going to be able to buy one in California.
That's sort of the rule and sort of not. The way it's actually breaking down is that a new RV that has a gasoline or that has diesel, either one, because they're looking at the emission levels. They don't care what the engine's made of. They're looking at the emission levels.
They want everybody.
So either one of those, but for the most part, it's going to be the diesels that get hit big on. Those RVs that are motorized and that have either the gas or the diesel engines, they're the ones that end up having to be subject to this. And the problem, of course, is that the chassis makers, well, almost all of the big motorized RVs are coming out with only Freightliner or Spartan chassis. There's a few others that are out there, but they don't make enough to even matter, really. And they're stuck with the same thing because they don't make the quantity.
Well, but wait a minute. What about Mercedes, the Sprinter chassis? What about Ford? I mean, you haven't mentioned them.
Oh, no. And that's because the way this law is set up, remember, you have to have a certain percentage. If you have this many RVs that you build, no, change that. Chassis. This many chassis that are gasoline or diesel.
Okay.
Out of that overall group, you got to have this many, and the size of that group depends on the total quantity you build, but you got to have a smaller percentage, somewhere between 5 and 8 or 10%, maybe a little more or less, that are non-polluting zeros. So as long as you make that little group, you can make the big group, and you can sell them anywhere you like. But the way the California law works is that if you only have that little group and you got the big group, but you don't have enough of the little group, can't sell any.
So hang on. So Winnebago, Thor, Forest River, these manufacturers, these great big motorhomes, gas or diesel, as it turns out.
Yep.
Because they don't have a fleet of EVs. Yes, what I'm hearing, they don't have a fleet of EVs.
They don't build them. They don't build the EV version.
They don't. Not going to have them either. But yeah. I don't think, at least not in our lifetime. So because they don't have them, seriously, because they don't have make them, they can't even sell them. So it's going to affect the dealers who have been in California forever selling these motorhomes. But I'm also hearing that it's not just limited to California. That California, this thing has spread out, and now it's in many. I've got the states here: New York, New Jersey, Washington, Oregon, and Massachusetts are moving forward on the stringent emission requirements that would push motorhome diesel engines out of the market.
Yeah, and that's just the first 5. There's more.
Oh, Lord.
But this is sort of a step-by-step process. They didn't say you can't make those chassis. What they said is that those chassis can't be sold new in California or these other CARB states. Okay, so they can make them and sell them in the other states. They just can't have a new RV that doesn't comply with this standard sold in these CARB states, California and the other 5. And then after that, there's another 5 states that will kick in over the course of the next year, 18 months or so after that. So it's spreading. Essentially, in a couple of years, this rule will apply to roughly 39% of all the population in the country. So out of all those states, those 10 states, 11 with California in there, when you add up the population in those states, what you're essentially saying is that around 39% of the people who might buy an RV won't qualify to buy one in their state because they can't be sold in their state.
Let me read something and get your comments on it. This is from you sent me a lot of information. It says
this is
the writer says, I'm going to be clear right from the bat. You're going to read a bunch of headlines saying that California may ban the sale of new motorhomes. This is not strictly true. California did not ban motorhomes.
Right.
And motorhome manufacturers do have a path to continue selling internal combustion engine vehicles in these 6 states. However, California's changes would make selling large motorhomes substantially harder, essentially giving the effect of a ban. That's exactly what you said.
Correct.
So they're not banning it. You just can't buy one. I mean, and so the manufacturer, what's a manufacturer going to do? They've got to be lobbying the governor. They got to be doing, and I don't know if that's going to work. You got all these.
They are. Yeah, they are. They're lobbying not just California, but also the other CARB states. The 5 that are coming up right away, they're hitting all of those, trying to get their changes in place to prevent that from hitting the RV industry. And they've got some valid argument about why it shouldn't apply to them. But the problem is you start making exceptions, and it's tough to get an exception to a rule passed. It's very tough. Yeah, a lot of these RV companies now and the industry itself is lobbying those states where these CARB rules are going to apply, trying to get them to create an exception that lets RVs out of it purely because they're RVs, not because they got a better chassis, not because they got one that doesn't pollute, but because it's an RV. And they've got some valid argument for that. But the real problem is it's very tough to get an exception to a law or to an administrative rule. It's very tough because once somebody asks for it, everybody and their brother starts asking for it. And that's a general thing that these boards, these government agencies and legislators, they don't like exceptions to the rules, just like courts don't like the exception to the rule.
Okay, let's go back to Ford because I saw that and I pulled something up. Talk a little bit, if you would, about Ford and why why Ford's going to maybe benefit from this.
Yeah, actually, Ford and Mercedes both are probably going to benefit from this. And the reason is because they make chassis. Ford in particular, they make a lot of the C's. So the C's and the A's are where the problem's going to be first and foremost in the RV world. And the reason is because the 2 biggest players, the vast majority of C's and A's, are on either a Freightliner or a Spartan chassis. Well, those 2 companies have said, we're not going to be making anything that complies with the CARB law anymore, which means can't sell them, can't build an RV on that and sell it in 31% of the market. So Ford, in the meanwhile, and Mercedes, because they have enough of these emission credits, because remember, you got this much being manufactured, you got to have about that much, at least zero. Well, that means electric. Well, guess what? Ford and Mercedes have a ton of electric vehicles out there. So they can make them and still sell them in the CARB states. So they will make the gasoline and the diesels and whatever, and they can get away with it. Now, of course, Mercedes focuses on essentially the Sprinter thing that you see, right, the Amazon trucks and everything. Ford, on the other hand, they've been really trying to dominate the C market. Well, what this now does is it opens up the door to both of those 2 companies to gobble up as much as the market they can over the next couple of years and take away from anybody who tries to get in. Ford's in a position to go after the A's because they're the ones who know how to build a chassis really good.
I'm going to opine here for just a second. To me, it's the most illogical. It is the opposite of common sense. And I looked it up. I've got the numbers right in front of me. What you said is Ford could benefit because they've got these credits. And the reason they have these credits is because so much of their fleet is EV. Right. People don't want EVs. They don't want them. And Ford is losing their ass with EVs. It says, this thing, I pulled it up just now. It says Ford lost a significant amount of money on EVs. And this is the first quarter of this year. Loss per EV. Ford lost more than $100,000 per EV sold in the first quarter. This was more than double the loss from the previous year. Oh, yeah. Ford's EV division lost $1.3 billion in the first quarter of 2024. equivalent to 132,000 for each one of the 10,000 EVs that was sold during that time. So people don't want them. The government's forcing people to have them. And then even going back further, when the governor of California said, we want everybody to drive these electric cars. And then right after he said that, oh, please don't use your electricity. How are you going to charge them up? I mean, it's like we are putting ourselves in these, it's like, I don't know, we're killing ourselves with rules and regulations, and we're crippling manufacturers. And it's not just the motorhome manufacturers. It's going to be the dealers, all the dealer employees. It's going to be felt everywhere. And those dealers, they want to sell something. The prices of other things are going to go up.
Well, that's where the industry is going to see a change, and RV dealers in particular, because first of all, this is not likely to change. They might hamstring it as best they can, but sooner or later, this is going to happen. So what's happening right now? When you think about what this means, that means that essentially there will be fewer Class Bs and As that are sold new in these CARB states. A whole lot fewer, and a whole lot faster too. Okay. Now, what are they going to do? Because remember, the RV industry, they've been building these things the way they've been building them.
Well, hang on,
vehicles in the shop being built that way now.
You said fewer Class Bs sold. Wouldn't you mean fewer Class As and Cs?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, A's and C's. Yes, that's where it's going to hit first. What's going to happen is the used RV market in these CARB states, that's going to go through the roof.
Yes.
You can buy a used Class C or Class A. It's not subject to these laws, the change in this law.
Well, not until you go get it inspected and they put that little sock on your tailpipe and they say, oh, now you don't qualify. I
don't know if that's going to happen or not. Right now, it doesn't, but that might. I can't tell you what they'll do in the future.
I don't know. It's rarely does government give back more than they take. And it's that creeping normalcy. And sorry, that's just what we have to do. And it's all about saving the environment, right? And China, in the meantime, is building coal-powered plants, and their pollution's coming right across, but we got clean air here, except they don't. I don't want to get political or anything. I know. When you get into that area and start looking at pollution and whatever else, the cleanest pollution isn't really being pushed hard against the marketplace out there. The cleanest pollution is the sun, solar energy, where you don't really have to do anything except suck it down and convert it into electricity. And there are others that are like that. Wind energy is another one. It has more difficulties, perhaps. But neither one of them are even close to what the internal combustion engine is. Nope. And so we're going to kind of wrap this up. I would, folks, if you're watching this, I'd like to know your thoughts. If you think this is a good thing, bad thing, what you think is going to happen in the future, drop a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, let us hear from you. One of my final questions, Ron, is how's this going to affect the Burdge Law Firm and RV lemon lawyers like you and Beth Wells and, that industry?
The way I think you look at that, basically from our perspective as lawyers, and I think as all lawyers are going to look at it, we always look at it from the perspective of where's the quality and where's the lack of quality. Because whatever they're building, if they build it right, RV owners are happy, and we just go do something else. Mm-hmm. But then again, where they don't build it right, that's the problem, where you end up having to sooner or later get a lawyer or else live with the problem that they're sticking you with. And that means look at the quality. Well, the two players that are left in the C market who can aim at the A market and everything, the two big players, that's Ford and Mercedes. Mercedes has always had pretty darn good quality with their RV chassis and their RV products. Historically, ever since they came out with the Sprinter, if you had a Mercedes chassis in the first place, odds were pretty good. You were not going to have a problem with the chassis. But Ford, historically, in our opinion, out of all the RV chassis makers out there, Ford has always been one of the most problematic. As they gobble up more of the market, that's going to mean a likelihood of more problems, in our opinion, quite frankly. It's that old bit about, look back at the pandemic. During the pandemic time, the RV industry in general was cranking out RVs as fast as they could.
Right.
Well, what happens when you crank up the speed is the quality goes down. Well, same things are going to likely happen here. as Ford cranks up its speed and as it tries to figure out how to get into the A market, and as Mercedes cranks up its speed, because the demand for RVs is actually going up. So the result is that they got to build more product. And when they start saying, hey, we need more product, the only place they can go to being Ford and Mercedes has to crank more. And when they have to crank more out, then the quality tends to go out too in order to get the production numbers up. So we're expecting that we're not going to see an increase in quality for RV owners for a while. And this is a problem that's projected to run out roughly 18 years.
Good Lord. I guess hence going back to how you first started this, you said you guys added another lawyer to your stable, hired another paralegal. So business is pretty good there, I guess, at the Burdge law firm.
Well, those plans were actually in effect before this hit. So then this hits and it's kind of like, good Lord, you know, it makes it harder for the industry. That's true. It makes it probably a little easier for dealers because they're going to sell more used RVs in these CARB states, and they're going to probably get just as much or more profit level out of it. And they'll be able to sell soft add-ons and everything more than ever. The one thing that an RV buyer needs to keep in mind now is that 7 magic words, because more than ever, the dealer is the one that the owner who buys that RV has got to look to. So they've got to stick that on that sales contract. We warrant this RV for 3 days. Write that on the sales contract and say you never need it.
So I got your email yesterday or day before, whatever, and I too received an envelope in the mail from somebody about 7 magic words. And I want to show you. There's the folks, just bear with me. If you think that good lawyers like Ron Burdge don't have a positive impact on people in these videos, it's just a short little note from a man named Richard Tequila Young. He's in Texas, and he sent me, look what he sent me. And I think he sent you $200 too. I didn't ask for it. I mean,
I didn't either.
Thank you, Richard, very much. But
he called me up and I told him, no, you don't need to send me any money. We support a childhood cancer organization called Alex's Lemonade Stand.
Yeah,
been around for a couple of decades. It's a foundation now. And I told him, send the money to them. Well, he sent it to me with a note saying, send it on to them. So I'll do that.
I mean, but isn't it nice to know that we're having you, especially, but me too, sometimes can have a positive impact on the lives of people and help them through their problems? I mean,
that truly is, you know, the only thing that you and I are doing here is we're trying to help people understand so that they can figure out the best thing for them to do in order to make their life a little bit better, both in the buying process and the living with it process and the getting rid of it process, if that's where they end up going. But the whole objective of my law career, frankly, and it sounds like the same for you, is just to help people have a little bit better life.
I love it. I want to end with this. What kind of advice would you give to me if I'm considering buying a motorhome today before the end of the 24 year, or soon into 2025, a big Class A or one of these Super C or something that is going to fall underneath this umbrella? Should I buy it now? Should I make sure I buy it from a different state? What kind of advice would you give?
I'd say, first of all, don't buy it out of state, whether you're in a CARB state or not. And the second thing I'd say is if you've gone through all the process and figured it out, and yes, the RV style is what you want, or you want to replace yours and get a new one. If you're going to get a new RV that's a C or it's an A, then I think the time to get it is right now. Because after this law kicks in 2025, it's going to be a different pricing point every place you turn, whether you're buying new or used, and whether you're in a CARB state or you're not. Things are very quickly going to go to the point where RVs are going to cost more, and because the marketplace is changing. So if you're going to buy carefully, but I think you need to buy sooner, not later.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know there's a lot of people saying, well, I'm going to wait till the market goes down. But that was before this CARB thing came up that's going to affect everybody. As we started talking about, it's going to have a ripple effect across the entire industry. And I think even beyond the industry. But I appreciate
it. You're going to see the chassis world change. And that's going to change the RV world.
Yeah. Well, I'm not happy about it. I like less regulation. I understand sometimes we got to have it, but good grief, this is going to put these manufacturers and the dealers in a really bad way, and consumers as well. So again, thank you for joining me, and let's do it again. And tell Beth Wells I'm looking forward to visiting with her.
She's getting ready.